1898, two brothers founded Tidiute Cutlery Company in Tidiute, Pennsylvania to make straight razors. In 1902, the company changed to Union Razor. In 1912, it changed to the Union Cutlery Company as the company had progressed into more multi-bladed pocket knives and fixed blade hunting knives.
I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Like you, be strong to hold the powers of the sun.
Listen to Pavarotti.
Can I be your superhero?
Hello, welcome to The Revealing. I'm Yost Pavarotti, and I'm here to discuss the Idaho 4 case. One thing that has really got me contemplating, so this isn't a definitive video on anything, but I am wanting to bring up some interesting questions, which normally I don't like to do, but I mean, my mind's just really focused on this right now for some reason. And I think it's because when I looked at the certificate of authenticity for the DoorDash driver, and I showed it to you in the video yesterday, it was November 23rd, 2022, which tells me, and I went through the progression on the motions in limine, how they backed off and then said, wait, we're trying to get a certificate of authenticity when they obviously had already produced one that must not have been real. So, but it takes me back to the beginning of the case, and then it made me start thinking about the KBAR. And one thing, when you do a little research on the KBAR, and I mean, this is twofold, right? You've got the issue of the KBAR sheath from the beginning. And by the way, if you watch any, this is where you know things are an orchestrated effort. Every single mainstream moron now and minion have all purchased KBAR knife sheaths, or somebody sent them all one. I mean, every one of them's got it. So when they talk about the DNA on the knife sheath, they don't just bring it up. They bring it up and they hold up a KBAR knife sheath and go, here's where they got the DNA off the snap. Like some kind of mind control game. It's very, very odd. Every time I see it, I go, somebody sent these people this for them to use as a demonstration in their brainwashing game or something. But when I do research on the KBAR knife and knife sheath, and then I go back to the beginning of this case, I mean, it's apparently kind of difficult if all you have is a sheath to determine if it was a military issued sheath or if it was a reproduction that you would have bought off of, say, Amazon. And everything that I read tells me that. And a lot of them say that you have to have the knife as well to determine if, the difference between a reproduction or in some cases the actual sheath. Or you at the very least have to do a very close examination of the pins on the sheath. And then when you think about a crime scene, they go in and they say, okay, here's the sheath. All right, well, they're not supposed to touch it, right? They're supposed to put it in a plastic baggie and mark it as evidence, send it off to the lab. With that being said, and the lab's over there swabbing it, trying to, get DNA off of it and processing it. I mean, it doesn't seem like that would be a good time for a knife sheath expert to go examining the pins to determine if it was a reproduction that was ordered off the internet or if it was an actual issued KBAR. And then when you look at the crime scene and all of the things that took place, and you got a KBAR knife sheath there, and everybody has been unalived in a military style prison fashion. I mean, I would think the investigators at first would have had to have thought, well, this person could have been in the military. Well, at least they had to go through their mind. Well, maybe this person was in the military. You had KBAR. Maybe not even just the Marine Corps, because they issue KBAR knife sheaths for Navy, Army. I mean, you can buy any of them. So I guess where I'm really perplexed is when I look in the warrants in this case, I don't see any warrants in there for lists of active or inactive military in the area. I don't see any warrants at all for anything around military. The first warrant goes to Walmart for purchasing of a KBAR, Amazon, eBay. So how is it that they just bypass a military knife sheath? How is it that they just bypass the military aspect of it altogether? I'm not saying that it's anybody in the military did this. I'm just saying, wouldn't that be the first place that you would file a warrant for, to get information on who may have been issued a KBAR in the area? Or even if it was purchased off of Amazon or eBay, it was KBAR, maybe, wouldn't your first thought be, well, somebody who was in the military is familiar with a KBAR, just purchased another one, Let's go to eBay and Amazon, and because this is obviously somebody that purchased a knife off of the internet. That just wouldn't be my first line of thinking, and the fact that there's nothing in the warrants that even explored that area it's perplexing to me. It's perplexing. Then you've got on the back end, they're saying Kohberger purchased a KBAR. I never seen anything in the documentation stating, and we know that could have been anybody in Kohberger's household that purchased that, but there's nothing in the documentation stating that he purchased a KBAR with a USMC Marine logo. I mean, you can purchase them for the Navy, the Army. There's all kinds of issues. I'll show you. But and then when you look up the ASIN numbers that they were, searching on Amazon, they got kind of specific on the ones that they were looking for. So it's just a very odd thinking process around this KBAR and the way they investigated it. It's very odd. And then I go back to how Ann Taylor throughout this case has said the state has hid their entire case. Well, if they had that DoorDash driver since obviously before November 23rd, if they faked a certificate of authenticity, and they've been trying to hide that witness all this time, have they really been able to hide it from the defense until they started, putting out the, witness lists and things of that nature? Is that really the person the defense has been looking for the whole time, and the prosecution's been able to hide them due to, I just don't think so. But then I do have to go all the way back to the beginning. And if that person, I don't know. I just don't know. But this KBAR thing's got me kind of perplexed. Let me show you a few things that I'm talking about on this, and then I'll get your thoughts on it, because I'm just trying to think through this one. Okay, so first, and just to show you where my thinking's coming in here, is in short, simply having a USMC or KBAR mark on the sheath doesn't guarantee it was a military issue. We all know this. To identify a truly issued sheath, you need to examine other factors like the overall condition, specific manufacturing details like the type of pin used to secure the pommel, and potentially the knife itself, which might have different markings or construction compared to modern reproductions. So it seems like there needs to be a very thorough examination of the sheath by somebody that was very knowledgeable about the differences between a military issued KBAR and just some, reproduction you would buy off of like an Amazon. But when you look at procedures of the crime scene, it doesn't seem like there is really a time frame for somebody to be able to do this before they start issuing warrants for these retailers for a knife sheath. And with no warrants issued for any type of military, something's missing in this process, I guess, is my mindset. But I need some help on this one, y'all. I'm thinking through this. I need y'all's thoughts. But let's look at the crime scene. What's supposed to happen at a crime scene. Now, we're going to laugh at a few of these things, but it kind of backs up the fact that there wouldn't be an opportunity for somebody to examine this thing thoroughly to determine if it was a military issue or a replica as they're doing the forensic examination of, DNA and everything else on this knife sheath. So why would the warrants not initially be for military personnel in the area? Driving me crazy. All right, so just for a quick rundown here on crime scene processing in Idaho, In Idaho, securing and processing a crime scene for evidence involves a methodical approach, emphasizing safety, documentation, and proper handling to maintain the integrity of the evidence. Key steps include securing the scene, documenting observations and evidence through photography, sketching, and detailed notes, and collecting evidence while maintaining a strict chain of custody. And initial response and scene security. First thing is responding officers' priority to ensure the safety of everyone at the scene, including victims and responders. They did that as they, reenacted a 911 call, right? Secure the perimeter. Establish a perimeter to prevent unauthorized access and potential contamination of the scene. This often involves using crime scene tape or other barriers, right? That's supposed to happen before, 100 college students go running through the house, contaminating everything. Witness management. Separate witnesses to prevent contamination of their accounts and ensure each witness provides their statement individually. What did Ann Taylor say? Law enforcement allowed them to sit in a group and talk about everything, even after two of them was supposedly together for 8 hours discussing everything. But then when the other so-called witnesses arrived, they let them, so we got pictures of them sitting in a group talking about what they're going to say, contaminating their account before they provide their statements. And she specifically pointed that out. Photography. Thorough photographic documentation is crucial. This includes wide-angle shots of the entire scene, medium shots of specific areas, and close-up shots of evidence. Yeah, like the knife sheath. A crime scene sketch or diagram should be created, including measurements to show the layout of the scene and location of evidence relative to fixed points. Investigators should take thorough written notes documenting observations, actions taken, and condition of the scene. A methodical search of the scene is conducted to locate and identify potential evidence. That happened when, Blaker and Payne were standing in the doorway and Blaker didn't see anything, but Payne seen the knife sheath under Maddie. This includes searching for trace evidence, hairs, fibers, glass, biological evidence, blood, semen, and latent fingerprints. But here we get to proper packaging. Evidence should be packaged and sealed in appropriate containers to prevent contamination and maintain its integrity. Different types of evidence require specific packaging materials. I would have to assume that a specific packaging material in a sealed package would be their main priority, since this KBAR knife sheath was their main only piece of evidence, that they would have taken extra special care to make sure it was packaged properly, which would not give anybody with experience to be able to determine it wasn't a military-issued knife sheath. And then you got chain of custody. Detailed chain of custody record is maintained, documenting every individual who handles the evidence from the time it's collected until it's presented in court. So, this tells me, oh, by the way, when you get to evidence is submitted to the Idaho State Police Forensic Service Labs for analysis, following established procedures for documentation and packaging. Once the scene has been thoroughly processed and documented, it can be released to the appropriate authorities or property owner. Yeah. Important considerations. Maintaining a clean and controlled environment is crucial to avoid contamination of evidence. This includes minimizing movements within the scene and using appropriate personal protective equipment. Like you see the ladies in the video dropping their rubber gloves on the ground, kicking them, and then picking them up and throwing them and everything else. But evidence integrity, proper packaging, labeling, and storage are essential to maintain the integrity of the evidence and ensure its admissibility in court. Effective crime scene processing often involves collaboration between law enforcement, crime scene investigators, forensic specialists, the head of the university, the prosecutors, the DoorDash drivers, and college students. Apparently, they all collaborate in this process. But it would be my thought is, how did they determine this wasn't a military-issued knife sheath if it was properly packaged and maintained until they pulled all the forensic evidence off of it And that, we know the time frame it took on that, and that does not allow time for somebody to properly inspect that knife sheath and determine it wasn't a military issued knife sheath. So why the warrant so fast for Amazon and Walmart and eBay? Blowing my mind here. And then again, when we go to these warrants right here, and this wasn't even the first one, as I've showed y'all, Walmart was the first one where they started searching for the knife sheath purchase, or the knife purchase. This is the first Amazon warrant, and you can see it gives the description of the property they're searching for with the ASIN numbers here. And like when you take the ASIN number for the Boomazio right here, this is for the knife sheath off of Amazon. And what made them go searching Amazon before they go searching for military personnel? And this is, you can see Boomazio right here, and it gives all the specs on the sheath. And this was this is the sheath they were searching for off of Amazon. But apparently, unless you can really know what's going on with these pins here, there's not really any way to determine the difference between this and an actual military issued sheath. So I'm just perplexed in where is the warrants for military versus just a random individual purchasing something off the internet. It does not add up for me. And then there's the fact that there's no specific details about what they're saying Kohberger or somebody in Kohberger's family actually purchased. When you start looking into the documents, I showed y'all the Skivyu Bitsu. It's a Amazon retailer, and they sell a specific item, which was a Maxim folding knife, and that was in the documents. But when you start looking at things like the KBAR, I mean, you can purchase a U.S. Navy KBAR, you can purchase a U.S. Army KBAR. This is all off Amazon. Or you can purchase an authentic U.S. Marine Corps KBAR. So it just says KBAR, over and over generically in the documentation. I mean, I can see why Kohberger would purchase a KBAR, or somebody in his family would purchase a KBAR. And I showed you that in the opening of this video if you paid close attention. But it never says in there in the documentation they've seen that he purchased a U.S. MC. I mean, he could have just as easily, or somebody in his family could have just as easily purchased a Navy or an Army one. So why is there not any specifics on that? And why would Kohberger or somebody in his family purchase a KBAR? Well, I mean, Kohberger is an avid hiker, and a lot of hikers carry KBAR knives, but specifically people from Pennsylvania prefer that brand. Why? Because if you watch the video in the beginning, let me show it to you again, and you'll see the history of the KBAR and who made it first.
1898, two brothers founded Tidiuk Cutlery Company in Tidiuk, Pennsylvania to make straight racers. In 1902, the company changed to Union Razor. In 1912, it changed to the Union Cutlery Company as the company had progressed into more multi-bladed pocket knives and fixed blade hunting knives.
So, I mean, obviously with the Union Cutlery Company originating in Pennsylvania, a lot of people, that are from the area where a history of a product is, they're kind of particular to those products. So being from Pennsylvania, if you're going to buy a hiking knife, I mean, you'd be more prone to buy a KBAR because of its history. But the fact that there was zero warrants to determine military personnel in the area is very, very strange to me. I'd like to hear your thoughts on it as well. And in the people, the morons out there with all these KBAR USMC knife sheaths to demonstrate during their brainwashing presentations, it's obvious. And I'll give you the best example. I watched Nancy Disgrace the other evening, and I was like, whoa, this is amazing. She had 3 people on her show, and as she was going through trying to use the Dateline leaked pictures, like a Kohberger with a hoodie on, and even, you know, his searches on dirty sites and stuff like that. And trying to create a nexus between pictures of girls at the pool party and the victims. She was going through trying to do all that, but she had McDonald on there, and of course he backed her up 1,000%. Oh yeah, no, yeah, Nancy, and think about this. You know, he's a moron. But then she had Joseph Scott Morgan on there, and when she tried to hit him on that stuff, he was like, well, yeah, I don't think you can make a correlation with this. And she was like, oh God, what are you saying, Joseph Scott Morgan? And she hurried up and got off him and went over to Howard Bloom. And Howard Bloom was like, yeah, I don't think wearing a hoodie is any proof of anything, and pictures of people aren't proof of anything, and his searches on the internet aren't proof of anything. I think you should just stick to the evidence. She was like, shut up, Howard Bloom. But then yesterday, I thought it was a new Nancy disgrace, but it was only like 10 minutes. She took that same episode where she had those same people on there that were arguing with her, actually making sense for once, and she cut them out and reposted the episode just with her assertions and McDonald. I mean, took out Joseph Scott Morgan and Howard Bloom, you know, actually using some sense for once. Took them out and reposted it. If that is not the most egregious thing I've ever seen to mind manipulate the public, I mean, I don't know what is. But I can tell you one thing, though, I would like to know about this. I mean, I really believe the defense should get an expert on determining the difference between military-issued KBAR knife sheaths and retail models. Put him on the stand, let him explain, you know, how difficult that process would be, and then take the evidence regarding the chain of custody and the dates of the warrants, and then slap those investigators on there and ask them, why didn't y'all look for military personnel in the area first? And I'd love to hear what they have to say about that. Now, let's see, today's the 24th, tomorrow's the 25th. I always devote the last 5 days of each month to those roommates. So I know we're waiting on some enormous rulings from this judge, the biggest one in the case, the alternate perp. And we're pretty certain how he's going to rule on the continuance, but I'm pretty certain that he has to take that death penalty off to grant that, to negate that continuance. So anxiously awaiting those. So if those come out, I will report on those. But while we're waiting, last 5 days, I'm hammering these roommates and the situation around that. So those will be coming to you probably starting tomorrow, unless we get rulings from the judge. Let me know your thoughts on this, though. Normally I like to, give you my thoughts as I present this information, but I'm literally perplexed on this one. It just doesn't add up for me. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Post your comments, your thoughts, your criticisms, and until next time, Pavarotti's out.